These are the two dumbest bots in chess.com, and today they are going to 1v1 each other, but each of their elos are 100, so this wasn't gonna end well. So without more talking, let's introduce June versus Zach. Yeah, and at the end, we are going to show how many blunders they made. Why A4? It's already an inaccuracy. There's probably going to be like hundreds of inaccuracies, bro. Alright, but at least June plays the best move. Knight F6. And just followed up by C3. You know, a good move, not bad. But we're just getting started, you know. Of course, we're going to just move our knight to the center of the board. But then, Zach plays C4. The best option was just to attack the knight. I genuinely do not know what is happening in this game. But in this position, June, the 100 elo bot, sacrifices the knight. Knight C3. A sacrifice on the knight. Like the opposing knight could take, a pawn on B2 could take, a pawn on D2 could take. It's just the biggest blunder. It gives 5 points of material, so much less development. But this kid, bro, Zach, plays E4. First of all, hangs a pawn, and second of all, just take the knight and develop. I genuinely don't know what we're doing. Okay, well, at least June can make up for her mistake and take on E4. But instead, E6. The queen was hanging, bro. Alright. At least Zach can take the knight, save the queen, but instead H3. What are we doing, bro? Now the queen is just gone, bro. But instead of taking it, G6, and then queen F3. I mean, at least the queen is out of the way, so, you know. But why? This just like, no, what? No. This loses a rook in the long term. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Okay. At least like this. Maybe they're just warming up. You know, these bots can warm up. But come on, just take the knight. Of course, another blunder. A5, a miss. Why A5? We will never know. But now, June can sacrifice the knight. Knight B5. Come on, what are we doing, bro? Why do we not take it? It's a free knight on C4 to B5. But no, we just ignore it. This is what I meant about emotional like damage here, bro. And then H5. Why? The knight is still under attack, and just take the knight, bro. But no, we're just gonna push our pawn. Said June just backs up her knight. I don't know why. I genuinely do not know why. Okay, now we have queen E2, which doesn't really do much at all, but sure. And then G5, B3. What? And then we have Rook H6. Now, you're going to see across this whole game, this Rook is going to, like, run a marathon, but only on those three. You'll see. But, of course, we have a sacrifice on the pawn. Pawn sacrifice. Leaving a pawn free for hanging. a6. Come on. A free capture was available and development was available, but instead we're just going to move up a pawn, defending an unattacked knight. Rook h2, bro. Rook h2, rook h2. Okay, I don't even need to comment on this. But knight a7. Why? I actually have no idea what could possibly be the use of this. But at least we have pawn takes d7, which checks. The better move would be to develop the knight, attacking the center, activating the bishop. But no, of course not. Taking here with the king, even if we had a bishop, now we're basically playing the bomb cloud here. The king is blocking the queen and the bishop development. Now we have f3. This is a horrible miss. We need to develop the knight, and the knight is completely captured. Now we have rook h8. This is just going to keep moving. But in this position, we have a pawn sacrifice right here. And now this basically just loses a pawn. But of course, we're just going to miss this entire. That's nothing compared to this move. In this position, Zach sacrifices the bishop. Bishop on b6. This just entirely loses material. But Zach finds this move that does literally nothing and hurts the entire chances of winning. In b a3. I have no idea what the purpose of this move could be. We could have attacked the rook, but no. Then we just go d4. The rook was hanging. The bishop was hanging. We just do this for no reason. And now, this is the biggest blunder, because June sacrifices their queen, but Zach doesn't find it with whatever this does. I genuinely don't know. It's just a free bishop. Now a blunder, losing a bishop in the end here. The bishop's just free. It's been free the whole time. But now c3, knight sacrifice. But then bishop e4. But now it's another sacrifice with king d2. Holy, the queen was just free, but they just miss it. This is actually insane. But at least the rook, will get captured. And no, the queen misses it, bro. The knight is still just hanging there, bro. King d1. Okay, now it's just simple. Take the knight, and no, what are we doing, bro? Why? I genuinely do not know. But in this position, Zach sacrifices the knight. Knight takes d5 with a sacrifice on the knight. Oh my goodness. Knight d5. Knight d5. Knight d5. I have nothing to say. Bishop a5. His fault. Leaves the queen open to being captured, of course. It's just free, bro. The queen is literally free. And, of course, Im just misses the opportunity to capture the free knight. But bishop a3 doesn't take the free queen. Doesn't save the knight. Doesn't do anything like that. But b5, blundering again. Blundering entire queen. But then queen e3. I have no idea if there is a purpose to this move. Rook on h7. No one asked you to be there. That also leaves for a fork, but of course, there's just bishop b4. But now we can just hang the bishop. Just hang it, and of course, we're not gonna take it, bro. It is looking cooked for white, but of course, this game is definitely going to turn around in like 5 seconds. Rook, just moving the rook randomly. And now queen takes c7. Definitely not the best move. But okay, at least, this simplifies the position. The black can just take the white queen. And queen... King e8. King e8. First of all, this loses the bishop. Second of all, the queen was just hanging. But okay, white's just gonna move the king, and oh my goodness, white doesn't move the queen. Instead moves the rook to a2 for genuinely no reason. But come on, we don't have to just hang this, bro. The bishop is still hanging. The bishop is still attacking the queen. But then d5 loses a queen. The bishop is hanging. You can just take the bishop. But no, g3 attacking the rook at least, but still the queen is hanging. Oh my goodness. Yo, why king f8? This doesn't do anything. It's the evaluation bar. Guys, look at the evaluation bar. Down, up, down, up. Come on. Down again. The knight is hanging. This is the rook. The white rook's also hanging. Bishop c5. This is a bishop sacrifice. Now rook d3. And now h2. Finally, we have something going on. Now they can promote. Nope, of course not. Okay, of course not, bro. We're just going to put our knight on f6, because why not? But queen f2, free bishop, by the way. But now, finally, June can promote the pawn up to why a knight, bro? Why a knight? I mean, cool, you attack the queen, but the queen's just gonna move, and oh my goodness, bro. The queen is open, but bro doesn't take it. Bro attacks the queen even more. But now, bro just hangs it. Rook g6. What? I can't even register these moves. I just don't know. And then bishop e2. Bishop e2. Bishop e2. What are we doing, bro? I can't register this, bro. I cannot register this. But now sacrificing the queen again. Again, bro. Again. Knight f6. Holy. You can just take the free queen, but this also... Now the knight can be pinned too, but of course, no one's gonna see that. This leads to losing a queen. The queen's like trapped. But in this position, black sacrifices the knight. Knight on d7. Come on, this is free material here, but bro does not take it. Leaves the queen without defenders. Knight d8. No one will ever know what this means. But finally we can take on this. Even though there's a free queen. The bishop is still there. But now, black's just gonna hang the bishop. Boom. But instead, they make it into a why? There's no point to this. There's genuinely no point to this. Okay, there's now a rook. Cool. It's checkmate in 6. It's literally mate in 6. White can mate the black king in 6 moves. All you have to do is just, oh my goodness. What are we doing? We're just sacrificing pawns now, which is cool. And now the knight moves. But finally, no, okay. The queen is still free. But of course, no one is going to see it. But now, knight on d4. If only the queen could go there. But this move, black sacrifices the knight. The knight sacrifice. It now is checkmate in 6. Now, they missed the opportunity to capture a free queen, bro. Now, knight f3. It's alright. It doesn't do much. You know, the knight was still free, but knight takes on e2. It's a strong choice taking the bishop. This is like their second best move, which is always nice to see. But then they sacrifice the bishop on f6. The bishop on f6. A brilliant sacrifice. King takes on f6. But now, in this position, white sacrifices. It's not the knight. It's the rook. Our first rook sacrifice of the game. Which there's definitely going to be many, many more to come. Now, the obvious move would be to attack the rook. Just take it on d6. But these are not ordinary players. They will not play the obvious move. Instead, they will be sacrificing the knight. A knight blunder. All the queen has to do is take it, but no. This just loses material. But then, finally, the knight can capture the rook. Now, all the black pieces have to do is capture the... Oh my goodness. Both knights are under attack. Now the c5 pawn is pinned. In a4, this just loses a knight, but of course we're not going to take. Now knight c2, this is a sacrifice of the knight, but of course we don't take. Of course. Now we're going to have another blunder because queen going to g5 forks the king in the pawn. But on this turn, Zach, the 100 elo bot, sacrifices not his knight, but his queen. Queen g7. Why this move? I don't know, but it's just a sacrifice of the queen. The queen is free. But this isn't a 100 elo chess bot. So these moves do happen. But this is genuinely one of the biggest blunders because this is a forced move for the king to take. Now after a couple more moves, the best move was to take the free knight, but pawned g5, attacking, but it's not the worst move, at least. But here, we have rook c6, and now the knight is still free, but no, we're just going to check and sacrifice the pawn. The king just moves out the way. But now, in this position. You already know what's about to happen. It is time to sacrifice the Rook. Rook B6. 2 pawns can take it. What? Zach finds the move, and now Rook can go to C4. Rook C4 attacking the pawn, further pushing against the white king. Now there wasn't an accuracy, but now another sacrifice of the rook. Rook C7. The pawn can take. This is just a huge missed opportunity to push, but not as much as just not taking the rook. Oh my goodness, knight attack, bro. You can fork the 2 pieces right now, the king and the rook, but the king just moves to B2, not taking the rook again. The rook is still free, but now we have another sacrifice of the rook. The rook on the B, and the king does not take it. The white king is currently in the corner, and now black just sacrifices another pawn. Oh my goodness, and then the knight moves out. The evaluation bar is going up and down again. What is happening in this game? No one will ever know. And then now it's tied up again with a rook blunder. Black could have gave a check, but the threat was just ignored. But now we're gonna see another blunder. But you know, it is 100 elo players, so you can expect blunders like these when the knight goes in front of the king on D2. The rook can go on to the second rank and then attack the knight, and then the knight cannot move because it's pinned. But instead, they sacrificed the rook. Rook on A1. The king can just take the free rook. There's no pieces defending it right now. But we're going to miss that opportunity. We're going to miss taking literally anything. I genuinely don't know how many brain cells these chess bots have. I have no idea how chess bots can be programmed like this. And now, with this move, white is somehow winning in this position. But yeah, that's definitely going to change in like 5 seconds. Because these are 100 elo chess bots, so they're going to make 100 elo moves. Like a knight sacrifice. White sacrifices the knight. The knight on E4. A pawn can take. No one will ever know why anybody will play this. And of course, we just don't know how to take using a pawn in a miss. You could push a pawn to B7. Now the rook. Oh my goodness. They just sacrificed the rook here. Oh my goodness. The knight can take. The knight could take. It's a free rook. Of course, the white knight won't take, but in this position, black can sacrifice the rook. Rook on H1. The knight. It's again sacrifice. But now we can do another rook sacrifice. Oh, but now we can sacrifice the rook again. Knight c3. We just missed the best option to push the pawn, but no shocker there. What are these moves, bro? Now we have knight f1. This loses the rook. Now the rook will be taken on. Nope. Okay. King h7. This loses the rook. And now, finally, the rook will be taken. What would you do in this scenario? You have a rook. You are up 6 points of material as black. What would you do? Well, June, the 100 ELO bot on chess.com, plays rook on e5, sacrificing the rook. The rook, bro, the rook. The pawn can now take the rook. But of course, her opponent, Zach, will never find this move. Instead, just attack a pawn. And now, it's just this game is so, this game, bro. Oh my goodness. Oh, king g6 misses, but does defend the pawns. But now, even though the pawns are defended, they're going to be sacrificing the knight. The rook is still hanging. But rook on c5. It's a mistake. Because they could have just pushed the pawn and then the opponent could do nothing about it. But instead, knight's gonna go to g3 again. Just repeating moves at this point. But king f6. Now the pawn is free. But this is a miss because the better move would have been to push the pawn and then basically win the game with the queen. But now king e6. What? We have knight f6. Chasing the knight and sacrificing the knight. Rook c2. Basically does nothing, and the better move was to push the pawn because white currently cannot do anything against just pushing a pawn. We have knight g8. No one will ever know what this does, but black is currently destroying white with a checkmate in 5 moves. All they have to do is just push. Okay, this is good, but this is not the best move. Now a7. The best move would have been to give a check with the knight, but this hangs the knight. But we have rook c6. This loses the rook. And black, of course, misses the winning move. Knight h6 with king a6. What is happening? But that's nothing compared to the rook sacrifice incoming when the rook goes to c7. This leaves the rook hanging. But instead, white promotes not to a queen, but into a knight. Attacking the knight, but the rook was free. But now, rook c5. An inaccuracy stops. Just first of all, the knight's just hanging, but the best option was to move the rook to safety on c8. But now we have king d7. Another sacrifice of the rook, but of course we're not going to take. And now we just have rook D7, a good move. The first good move probably like ever. Now we have this check, which is always good. King E6, and now the legendary move that will change the game forever. Kinda, not really. Knight on C7, a great move because it's defended. This sets up a fork on the two targets, which is the rook and the king. King on E7, but unfortunately, they just go, they sacrifice the knight on E8, and then rook on D6. The knight was captured. I genuinely cannot process anything that's going on in this game. But on move 93, we have knight on C7. Could have taken the rook, but no, B4, B7, and now they sacrifice the rook. Rook on D5, the literal worst move you could have made. But then king on A8, all the way in the corner, pretty safe. All right, look at this evaluation bar. After B3, white is completely winning. Before it was black, but now white is destroying them. Now the knight can take the rook and win the game. But instead, they promote to a rook. First of all, instead of a queen. Second of all, the rook was free to capture. And this is move 96. This game is not going to end. And after rook D7, and then rook B6, another miss. There was a free pawn right there on the file. King F8, and then rook B5, B5. Now move 98, rook check on D8, but it was a miss because, you know, you could just push the pass pawn. But now move 99, king A7, rook D3. This allows, by the way, this does allow for the rook to be won through an eventual fork. If bro just went here, the king just went here, boom, attacks, and then, you know, you would get a free rook. But no, of course these bots just don't do any of this. This game is genuinely just blunders city, bro. And on move 100, they just move the h-pawn, and then the final move, rook d4. And that's the game. After the move 100, the game just ends in a draw. But what do you guys think? Now what you guys have all been waiting for, how many blunders they made, and, well, the answer is a lot. They made a ton of blunders, and the evaluation genuinely just went up and down and up and down, and they had a grand total of 0 accuracy, bro. Their accuracy was just literally the lowest it could be. I genuinely don't know how that's possible. They have 0 brilliant moves, 1 somehow great move by Zach here, and then a couple best moves, but we can obviously see that one bot does have some better moves, but blunders way more.